I am Dr. Danielle Chum,
Jordana Damon,
Dr. Adrian Starks,
Aaron Smith,
Dorothy Tovar, and
I
can change the world.
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 Hey everybody, I'm Hattie,
And I'm Kendall.
and we'd like to welcome you to She Can Change the World. Inspired by her childhood stay in Haiti, Dorothy has dedicated her life to the study of infectious diseases. She is currently researching an antiviral immune responses in bats to help her better understand diseases like Ebola in humans. Dorothy is also very passionate about helping students of color excel in all STEM fields. Let's hear more from Dorothy.
Thanks so much, ladies. My name is Dr. Adrian Starks. I'm the founder and CEO of Stream Innovations. Today, we have Dorothy Tovar that will be sharing her STEM journey with us, and I am so excited for her to be able to tell you some of the cool things that she's done with infectious disease and bats. Come on, Dorothy, come on in.
Hi, hello, Dr. Starks.
Hi. So tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, so I am currently a PhD candidate at Stanford University studying microbiology and immunology.
Wow, so you were doing microbiology and immunology.
Mhm.
When did you develop a passion for that?
Yeah, so I actually grew up in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and that's where I spent most of my childhood. But my family immigrated to the US from Haiti,
Oh, wow.
and I spent a lot of my childhood there as well. And while I was there, I had a really personal encounter with infectious diseases that, changed my life forever.
What happened?
Yeah, so I was staying with my grandma, and one day I made the horrific discovery that I was infected with an intestinal parasite. Yeah, they're basically
Whoa.
these like little worms that, can grow and live in your stomach. And I was horrified. I was terrified, actually, really. I thought I was gonna die. It was the scariest thing that has ever happened to me for sure.
So what happened? Did you go to the hospital? Like, how did they treat
Right.
that?
Yeah. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, it's time to go to the emergency room. Like, let's get
Yeah.
to it. I run to my grandma and I tell her what happened. And she's super calm, super chill. She goes into the kitchen and she makes up this concoction that turns out to be a medication. And she gives it to me and has me drink it. And this medication resolved the infection.
Wow. So your grandma was kind of like a chemist or a scientist back in the day?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in a country like Haiti, you kind of have to be, right? And I think that experience really showed me how common diseases that we don't even hear about in the
Yeah.
States are in countries like that. And
Yeah.
that, when you don't have as much access to healthcare, you kind of do have to fend for yourself and figure it out yourself. I mean, I don't know what she gave me in retrospect. It was probably something that, she got from a doctor to cure stuff like this, but I mean, yeah, just the fact that living in a country like Haiti exposes you to diseases like this that are easily preventable really left an impact on me and really drove my curiosity into diseases.
Wow. So you go back home from visiting your grandmother in Haiti, and around that time you were still young, so you had an interest in science. I'm imagining.
Yeah.
What was middle school like for you, with knowing that you wanted to be able to treat other people and
Mhm.
for people to not be able to get a parasite? What was middle school like for you?
Yeah, so I mean, having that experience and then, coming back to America and going back to school was really hard for me. And it was really hard to stay engaged and stay interested in the stuff that we were talking about in class when I already knew that I wanted to commit my life to this very specific kind of work that just wasn't getting covered. So really I just wasn't interested, and I had a really hard time doing all of the homework assignments and studying for tests and exams. It kind of bored me.
So I know a lot of kids don't like school either, but you had identified this thing that you really wanted to be able to do, and school was just not your favorite place at that time. So how
Mhm.
did you get through that to continue to like science?
Yeah, that was a huge challenge for me. And if I'm going to be 100% honest, it was mostly because I didn't have a choice. My parents were super strict growing up, and so they didn't really allow for me to slack off in school.
Mhm.
And I think a part of me, when I look back now, I am happy that I did stick with it because I wouldn't be able to be studying the things that I'm really interested in now if I didn't, push through the really rough parts that I wasn't interested or didn't really want to do any work on.
Yeah, I understand. So, would you consider yourself a nerd, although school wasn't your favorite? So, what did that look like for you in middle school?
Yeah, I think I was probably a secret nerd. It wasn't really something I talked about with my friends. We were always watching music videos and learning the new dances and, trying to bring up like, hey, have you ever heard about intestinal parasites? It was not like gonna go well with
No,
anyone.
no.
So yeah, I really kept it pretty close to heart actually. And it was something that I just kept to myself.
I understand. So, in school, in middle school, and maybe in high school, it wasn't your favorite, but you
Mhm.
decided to continue to pursue it. What did that look like? You graduating from high school?
hmm Yeah, so when I graduated from high school, I was really excited because I was like, this is my chance. Like, no more classes that I don't want to take anymore. Because then, when you go to college, you get to major in something, right? So now I get to have a major and I can just study exactly what I want to study.
Mhm.
So I decided to go to the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. And the number one reason why I went is because it was one of the few schools that let me major in microbiology as an undergraduate and not have to take a bunch of other kind of science classes that I just didn't want to take. And so I was really excited to finally be able to just focus on my interest and really start to do work that I thought would impact the world.
So, high school and middle school were a little bit difficult because you didn't get a chance to really do the things that you really liked. And being able to go to Amherst gave you the opportunity to do that. So, what helped you along the way between middle school and high school to be able to find that space that you really like? Was there anyone that supported you through during that time?
Yeah, I think I was able to make some really great mentors along the way, and I didn't know that's what I was doing at all. One of them in high school, I joined the debate team for my high school, and the coach for the debate team was also my history teacher. And on our way to debates, we would just talk about life, and she would ask me what I was interested in, and I would just like, finally just like share that like, okay, I'm secretly a nerd. Like I really like infectious diseases. This is what I think is really cool. This is what I want to do. And she was able to really hear me and kind of understand where I was
Yeah.
coming from in a way that I think a lot of teachers didn't.
Yeah.
And having that relationship with her really pushed me along. She's that one who actually helped me decide to go to UMass Amherst because that's where she went. And I think just having that kind of relationship with someone who's ahead of you
Yeah.
and can kind of, give you direction, give you advice, and kind of tell you which way to go was really helpful in pushing me along.
Yes, mentors are really important. Having someone that can see you and be able to advocate for you and
Mhm.
give you a little bit of direction is extremely important. So
Exactly.
I agree. I think students being able to find mentorships is key to be able to do the things that you really want to be able to do. So let's talk a little bit about, so you're at Amherst, you're studying microbiology. What was that like?
Yeah, it was a really exciting time for me. And to touch on the mentor point one more time, I had a really cool mentor who was a scientist at UMass, and he was actually also an immigrant from the Caribbean. And
Oh,
so we connected immediately. And I told him my story about the intestinal parasite and why I was interested in microbiology. And he took me into his lab and allowed me to get my first research experience in his lab.
wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
hmm
Yeah. So being able to connect with him and him giving you the experience was it all tied back to you being able to identify that this was the thing you really wanted to be able to do.
Yeah.
So you're at Amherst, you're studying research, you are focused, intestinal parasites, infectious disease is what you're going to do. So when you were getting finished with college,
Mhm.
how did you determine what you were going to do next?
Yeah, so I knew that I really wanted to do research, and I really wanted the research that I did to impact people in countries like Haiti. And in my mind, and all the reading that I did and the people that I talked to, the best way for me to do that was to continue on and get a PhD. And basically, having a PhD means that you're a professional researcher, is the best way to describe it. It means that what you study, you are the expert of. And I
Mhm.
really wanted to be an expert in that.
So outside of the professor that you met at Amherst,
Mhm.
had you met anyone else that was a scientist that you can connect with or that looked like you before?
Yeah, it was kind of rare, but there were definitely a few other students of color at UMass who were also in microbiology. There were three of us, and we were very close. We would have study sessions together. We would kind of compare notes and,
Mhm.
tell each other about different internships to apply for. So definitely having that like squad with me throughout the way definitely kept me going and kept me energized and made me feel like, okay, like I belong here. Like there's someone else who looks like me and I'm not the only one. So I think
Mhm.
we all can do this.
Yeah. So you were finishing up at UMass Amherst in microbiology. What were some of the things that you were deciding to do next?
hmm Yeah, so I knew that I really wanted to continue doing research that impacts disease in countries like Haiti.
Mhm.
And in order for me to be able to do that, I decided to continue and get more schooling to get my PhD in microbiology. And basically, when you get a PhD, that means you're an expert in this thing. And I
Mhm.
really wanted to become an expert in infectious diseases.
Mhm. So you wanted to continue to do research. So how does that connect to what you're doing now?
Yeah, so right now I'm getting my PhD in microbiology at Stanford, and my research focuses on understanding why bats are a really huge source of diseases that get into people and make us really sick. So think of like Ebola and rabies.
Mhm.
And, when we get these diseases, we get really sick and it kills a lot of people. But bats, on the other hand, when they have the same diseases, don't seem to get sick in the same way. And so my research is really trying to understand why that is.
Wow. So do you work with like live bats?
No, thank God.
So
No, I'm a city
how-
girl. I think I'd be, yeah, a little too afraid to handle live bats. So my research uses cells that have been collected from bats that we grow in the lab.
okay.
And so I use cells that are grown in these little dishes, and I can look at them under a microscope and infect them with different kinds of microbes and see how they respond.
Okay. All right. So that's cool. What's one of the coolest things that you've been able to do with your research with bats recently?
Yeah, so I think the favorite thing that I've been able to do is last year when the COVID pandemic was getting started, I did a YouTube live session with Goldie Blocks and was able to live stream and answer all of these questions that kids had about what COVID was, where it came from, how can we protect ourselves. And I think my favorite thing about doing this kind of research is always about giving back and making sure that the things that I'm learning and the work that I'm doing is actually useful for other people. So it was really nice to be able to just answer questions and help people out in a time when everyone was so stressed and worried and really scared.
You and I met because we're both IFTHN ambassadors.
Mhm.
So we have been selected with 100 plus other women that are doing STEM amazing work. And for all of us, we have a 3D printed statue. So you have one, I have one. How did you feel when you first heard that you were going to have a 3D printed statue of yourself?
Yeah, I will never forget that day. We were all sitting together in this, big hall and they made the announcement. And I just remember turning and looking at Tiffany, another ambassador, and we're both like, what? Like, that's not funny. Like, what do you mean? And I'm thinking like little, mini statues. And they're like, no, like life size, however tall you are, that's how tall the statue's gonna be. 3D printed statues. So it was an amazing feeling. I think even now, It still doesn't really feel real just yet. I'm really excited to be able to go see our statues in Dallas where they are now. But it makes me happy to know that young girls and even boys can look at my statue and look at me and feel inspired by my story and feel like, okay, being a nerd might not be cool right now, but this person stuck through and here she is, and, you know, have that help them along their way too.
So if you could go back and talk to your middle school self that didn't like school that much, what would you say to her now?
Yeah, I think what I would say to her is don't box yourself in. I had a lot of dreams really early in my life, and we so often tell young people, you know, dream big and plan what your future is going to look like. And I latched onto that so much. I had every single thing for my life planned out, like where I wanted to go to college, who I wanted to work with, everything. It was so extra. And at times along my path, having those dreams sometimes felt suffocating. And it felt like if things didn't go according to plan, then my whole world was collapsing. And I'm really starting to learn as I look back on my life so far that like the things that didn't work out the way that I wanted to, you know, worked out better than what I could have ever planned. And so what I would want to tell my younger self is, you know, dream big, have a vision for the future, but don't get caught up in the details and understand that things will work out the way that they're meant to be.
Thanks so much, Dorothy, for sharing your STEM story with us. If you want to learn more about Dorothy Tovar and her amazing work with infectious disease, go to the ifthencollection.org. Thanks, Dorothy, for sharing your story with us.
Thank you, Dr. Starks.